In today's video, we're talking about a real water-cooled PS5, if Sony's big gamble was worth it, and were we wrong about the new PS hardware? How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and we are officially in October. I could not be more excited. I mean, beyond the fact that my wedding is October 13th, that's extremely exciting. The most exciting thing that's happening this month. It's also Halloween season, which is the best time of year. This weekend, I wrapped up my playthrough of Resident Evil 5. That game is available on PS5 through the PS4 backwards compatibility. They actually ported it up, and every time I play Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, you know, the originals, not the remakes of 4, well, 5's never been remade. You know what I'm saying? Whenever I play those original games with their ports up to the PlayStation 4 on my PS5, I am consistently impressed at how good the graphics still are. Those are some of the best looking games ever, and they're pretty fun to play as well. The first thing I wanted to talk about today is this water-cooled PlayStation 5. It's like a water block that costs $450 for your PS5, and it's like an upgrade that I guess you solder on. I don't really know. Let me look into it really quick. Okay, so to use this thing, you have to disassemble your PlayStation 5, extract the PCB, and install it within the monoblock, which is compact enough to fit into a regular mATX chassis. So basically, it seems like you're pulling out all the important critical parts of your PlayStation 5 and you're just installing it into this square object, and that will become your new PlayStation 5. So you're taking out the main motherboard and the chip and everything like that and just dropping it into a new PC style architecture piece that you could then put into a new PC style case. And at that point, $550, like you're paying $1,000. I don't know. I think you could get a pretty damn good gaming PC. Of course, the big downside there is that DualSense using it wireless on a PC kind of sucks still. It doesn't work in every game. The Bluetooth is finicky. I really wish Sony would release the dongle that you have on the Xbox side of the fence that makes it have their wireless radio technology that doesn't get disrupted or anything like that, like the DualSense does over Bluetooth. And also, of course, you'd be losing out on all the PlayStation exclusive games. You just have to wait a little bit for them to come to PC. But if you're paying $1,000, right, that's kind of crazy. And also, you got to rely on your skills pretty much alone to take apart your PlayStation 5. The most experience I've had with this, well, I've taken apart a PlayStation 5. I've taken apart 2 PlayStation 5s. Austin Evans and I, we ordered the hardware revisions and we took them apart and we looked at the motherboards and we saw that one was 50% smaller than the other. It was pretty cool. Other than that, though, back in the day when my Xbox 360 unfortunately got the red rings, I sent it in, I got the new Xbox 360 back, and then after a month or something like that, it got the red rings again. And that time Microsoft was like, well, we already fixed it once, so it's probably your fault, your SOL. I tried everything, man, including the towel trick, and none of it worked. So I said, hey, I'm just gonna open this thing up and repair it, because either way, I'm out an Xbox 360. If I fix it, that's great. If it breaks, my Xbox 360 is already broken, so who cares? That was impossible. I took that thing apart from top to bottom. All I wanted to do was put the new thermal paste on the SoC, and I couldn't do it. It was really a tough process. Now, since then, I've taken apart Steam Decks, I've taken apart ROG Allies. I still don't think I could take apart that Xbox 360, and even knowing that I have taken apart a PlayStation 5 before, I really wouldn't mess around with this, because you have to void your PS5's warranty, so if you screw up, you're kind of SOL. The PS5s aren't as hard to get anymore, but still, you don't want to be without a PlayStation 5 for that long. With that being said, this thing does look pretty damn cool, and if you are into that white sort of gamery PC aesthetic, I see why you could want something like this. Or if by some chance you had an extra PS5 laying around, when the slim model comes out later this year or early next year, you pick that up, you've got your original PlayStation 5, and you're like, hey, I've got $450 to burn, I kind of want to disassemble it and put it back together in this new shell. It is a cool little project. It's just not something that I feel like the masses are going to adopt very quickly. But again, it is pretty cool. I'm not going to link it down in the description. You can Google it yourself. Just Google monoblock for PlayStation 5. It seems cool. I don't think I'm going to spend my time putting this together. This video is sponsored by HelloFresh. HelloFresh takes the hassle out of cooking by delivering pre-portioned ingredients and easy to prepare recipes right to your door. Skip the checkout line and take a walk in the falling leaves, because HelloFresh has dinner covered. Since they use pre-portioned ingredients, it cuts down on your food waste by over 23%, which of course is great on your wallet and also the planet. It's definitely cheaper than grocery shopping, and also 20 25% cheaper than takeout. There's really no downside here. I got really into cooking over the past year, and HelloFresh has made it so much more fun. I can personally attest to the fact that it's great for beginners because the recipes are so simple and easy to follow. Huge shout out once again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video, and when you're ready to try it out, go to https://strms.net/HelloFresh_PSReady and use the code POGHF113302 to get a special discount. Alright, so this next news story has to do with the situation with Jim Ryan retiring from PlayStation. By March of 2024, he will be stepping down as the leader of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and Hiroki Totoki will be the interim leader. And people are 50-50 about this, right? Like, on the one hand, Jim Ryan did shepherd us through the launch of the PlayStation 5. He got it to a point where it is available. Tons of great games have come out under his watch, like Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, and God of War Ragnarok. But then on the other hand, you have issues like him making niche products like the PSVR 2 and then not really supporting it. Of course, the PlayStation Portal is pretty contentious here in America. And the thing that's the most contentious with hardcore gamers and hardcore PlayStation fans like myself is the big focus on live service games. And it seems like internally, developers working at Sony are feeling the same way. And ironically, we're seeing it on a bigger scale at Sony now, which sucks, but this already happened at Microsoft with Redfall. So I'm sure you know about Redfall, or you probably forgot about it because of how fast it came and went, but it was made by Arcane. Now, it wasn't made by the main Arcane studios, it was made by the ones here in America, but basically, instead of making, you know, the style of game that they've made before, which is an immersive sim, they made the Dishonored games, for example, which are immersive sims. They made Prey, which is another immersive sim. You know, they're open world games where you can kind of do anything you want. You can tackle it from a variety of different play styles, and the game just gives you a bunch of tools to play around with. They made like a Far Cry style 4-person co-op open world shooter, and beyond the fact that it was like content light and totally broken and just really not fun to play, like the story itself isn't even great. I think they're going to need to do a lot of work to really fix it and get it to the point where Pete Hines said they wanted it to get to, which is like people will still be playing it in 10 years. They lost a lot of developers because of the development cycle. Like, people joined Arcane to make immersive sims like Dishonored, and I know that they had to do something different because both Dishonored 2 and Prey failed to meet sales expectations, as did the Death of the Outsider standalone expansion for Dishonored 2, but still, I don't think the right move was to go and make an open world first-person shooter that's kind of like Far Cry Light and comic book inspired, sort of, in a way. I love vampires. I love the world of that game. Having it be in an open world fall setting is awesome, but at the end of the day, that's not what they're good at making, and it really showed, right? Like, beyond the performance issues and everything else I already mentioned, it just wasn't really all that fun to play, and they lost a lot of developers doing so. So even though we had a game like Dishonored 3 leak by Xbox, I'm not sure it's going to be as good as the Dishonored games of the past. And it seems like the same sort of thing is happening over at PlayStation, right? Like, Sony bought Bungie to bring them in and show them how to make live service games. They also gave Bungie the ability to go studio to studio and say, hey, this game you're working on, it isn't really shaping up. We're going to shut that down so you can go back to the drawing board and make something better. That happened with Sony's biggest and best studio, which is, of course, Naughty Dog. Shit out of it, keep people playing it for months and months on end. So they said go back to the drawing board, and people at Naughty Dog are pissed, right? Like, I would leave a studio over that if I joined Naughty Dog to work on some of the most critically acclaimed single player narrative driven combat style games ever, and then I get bumped to a multiplayer project at Sony's crown jewel, and then this new studio comes in that hasn't even produced a game for Sony and says, yeah, this live service isn't working, sorry you wasted years of your life working on that, but you're gonna have to start over. I can definitely see why people would be leaving that studio, because they're like, I didn't join to work on these style of games. There are plenty of other studios out there still making third-person action adventure single-player games, so I'm gonna go work on those, and when Naughty Dog comes to their senses, maybe I'll apply for a job again. And I feel like that's gonna happen at every PlayStation studio, whether you're talking Insomniac or you're talking Santa Monica Studio. Just because these are studios making great games in general doesn't mean they're great at making every style of game. And when you compare games like Spider-Man or Ghost of Tsushima to the stuff that that Santa Monica is doing. They're all different games, but they're all very similar. So that's what they should be working on, right? Like single player, open world, third person action style RPGs versus having half your studio incubating multiplayer games that are going to monetize and have battle passes and all the crap that people hate. Like making a single player studio that ships their entire game on the disc work on a game that's not even going to be on the disc, and the game you buy on the disc isn't even going to be relevant after 6 months because they're going to totally change the game. You can see why this isn't making sense to a lot of people. Now the big issue is the interim leader, Hiroki Totoki, apparently he's way more into mobile games than he is console games, which means on console he's probably going to be hammering down on these live service games, and then on mobile he's going to say, hey, big developers like Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, and Insomniac, it's time for you to start working on mobile games as well. And if I was working at any of these studios, I'd be like, man, I'd either start my own studio or go work at an indie developer or work at a single player studio like Bethesda Game Studios, for example, or CD Projekt Red, because that's what I joined PlayStation Studios to make, the best single player games in the industry. And if they're splitting their time between online only games and mobile games, that's not what the high level talent wants to work on, because they don't want to be subject to abuse from people, because everyone hates live services now in online only games because they really deserve it, right? Like games like Diablo 4, they spent all that time making that game and it comes out and it's not sticky enough and people bail off of it, and they're still doubling down on these weak seasons and bad quality of life changes that extend timers and make you play the game every single day to level up. It's the same thing as Call of Duty, it's the same thing as Destiny, it's the same thing as Fortnite. People are sick of it, and making these games succeed is extremely difficult. So honestly, it seems like a waste of time on one front because you're spending a bunch of money on something that most likely will fail, and then it's a failure on another front because people are going to leave your studio over it, like what happened with BioWare. That is a shell of what they were back in the day when they were pumping out stuff like Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. Now it's like a wonder if they even get a game out the door. So yeah, I see why people are upset with the situation that's happening at PlayStation right now. Hopefully we get some reassurance coming out the door from some of the executives over there that let us know, yes, we will still be making these single player games you've come to know and love. Like Herman Hulse, for example. That dude basically took Shuhei Yoshida's job. I think it's time for him to come out and let us know what we have to be excited about in the future that isn't Destiny 3 or Fortnite 2. You know what I'm saying? All right, next up here, we got to talk about a surprising story about the PlayStation Portal, because this thing is coming out soon, about a month from now on November 15th. It'll start shipping, and just like the PSVR 2 headset, they started shipping this thing only on PlayStation Direct, but as time went on, you can now pre-order it on Amazon and Best Buy and other retailers, which is cool. Now, in terms of success, I wouldn't read into that too much. Obviously, they would have been happier if it sold out on PlayStation Direct, but this is once again a niche project that people have to be kind of sold on. But it seems like, at least in some territories, people are sold on it because it's sold out in Japan. Like, people are really into this thing. On every storefront it's available on, it is currently sold out, which is cool. And over here in America on Amazon, if you look at the top 3 things that are being sold in video games, of course it's gift cards for the PSN, the Nintendo store, and the Xbox store. But then beyond that, it's like the PlayStation Portal and then some big games that have to come out like Mario Wonder. I think the biggest thing that's helping this happen is, of course, that price point. I think Sony absolutely nailed it with that $200 entry fee, because like, even if you're not really going to use it all that much, it's a price point where you could feel okay buying it just to try it out. And with a lot of retailers like Best Buy and Amazon having 30-day return windows, you can kind of do it guilt-free, right? Like, you could pick this thing up, you could set it up, you could set up your PS5 for remote play, you could see if it works on your Wi-Fi network, and if it doesn't, you're really not out a lot of money if you have to keep it, or you could just return it and get your $200 back. And I think the biggest lesson that Sony should learn here, that they definitely won't, is that people just really want a PlayStation handheld at this point. And even if it's this like lame version that only plays games over the cloud from your PlayStation 5, it's still cool to have a handheld with a big screen that looks nice and has DualSense features and a DualSense cut in half as the controller. I really think that it's time for Sony to wake up and realize that they should make a PSP 3. Like, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been shown behind closed doors. It has a chip that's capable of DLSS, and they were able to run Breath of the Wild all the way up to 4K at 60 FPS, and other games like Final Fantasy VII Remake are going to be launching on that thing, and they're probably going to run pretty well because of that upscaling technology. That's something that Sony could definitely implement with AMD in a new PlayStation handheld, because we have that on the Steam Deck, right? Like, the Steam Deck is the perfect template for what you could make make with the PlayStation handheld, but Sony's done this in the past where they had console quality gaming on the go. And if they can make this thing support micro SD or 2230 SSD like the Steam Deck does as well, you could really get people on board with a device like this pretty much out the gate, because it would play the same games that your PS5 does, but you'd be able to take them on the go, which is the dream for so many people. I feel like the Nintendo Switch opened up people's eyes into what you could do with a handheld, and the Steam Deck kind of took it and ran with it, and now we're just waiting on PlayStation to do the same thing. But as far as the PS Portal goes, people seem to be more excited about it than I thought. It's sold out in Japan, it's selling really well here. Let me know if you're picking one up down in the comments below. Anyway guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.